Right, hello and welcome to episode 45 of the ReptiChat podcast. Warburton's recently surveyed 10,000 people to find out the UK's favourite sandwich. Turns out it was ham and cheese, so I guess you could say you are now listening to the ham and cheese sandwich of reptile podcasts. As always, a quick bit of housekeeping before we get into today's episode. First things first, Patreon. Let me find the buttons to push. Patreon, there we go. Patreon, you guys are on screen now. Thank you to each and every single one of you, guys and girls. You really help making this podcast that little bit easier. Now, not a podcast member? Here are 5 reasons why you might like to join the Patreon. There's stickers. Who doesn't love a sticker? There's the Repti Squad. Can't get my words out. There's the Repti Squad Discord, where we're slowly building a nice little community of like-minded reptile keepers. Number 3. You get to have your name on the Patreon slides that you can see on screen now. Number 4, early access to all of the Repti vlogs and early access to any not live podcasts. So yeah, spoiler alert. No, ignore the spoiler alert. Doesn't matter. That's an old thing. And number 5, it starts. I can't even speak today. It's going to be a great episode. It starts at as little as £1 a month. So there you go. There's a few reasons why you might like to consider joining the Patreon. Also, just a quickie, as I've mentioned, sorry, my brain is not with it today. It's been a little while since I've done a live podcast. As I mentioned previously, I am a Tough Mudder ambassador. Yes, I am. So, if you want to come and have a go at getting yourself covered head to toe in mud, or whilst clambering over obstacles, then there's a code on screen. You can use it now to save yourself some pennies. I think I can't remember if it's 20 or 25%, but if you want to have a go, sign yourself up. If you're unsure about it and you want to know more, drop me a DM. And if you want to have a go but you can't afford it, because it's not the cheapest thing in the world, I may have a couple of free tickets. So, slide into my DMs. Anyway, let's see who's in the chat. Who have we got in the chat today? So, hello, Dan. Nice to see you here. Thank you for coming in. What? Evening. Hope you are well. Thank you for joining us. Serenity, thank you very much. I've got a question already as well. So, Serenity saying, wait, we're called the Repti Squad. Yes, you're called the Repti Squad, and it is better than being a Swiftie. Right. So, where are we at? I suppose I should do the intro, really, because I'm not introducing a guest. So let's bang the intro. So today's episode is a little bit different. As you can tell from the title, there is no guest. It's just little old me, apparently struggling to get my words out, giving a bit of ramble and a bit of an update with what's going on with me and the podcast, and then we'll finish up nicely with a Q&A as well, so you've got plenty of time if you're listening to get your questions in the chat. I'm going to do my absolute best to monitor the chat at the same time as doing the stuff over this side. Right. I've been gathering a lot of questions. I've been gathering questions through Patreon, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook all week. I've compiled them for today's episode. I've got a few repeat questions as well, so I'm not going to read out who's asked the questions, just the questions themselves. However, if you are asking a question in chat, I will, of course, mention you. So I will do my very best to get through as many questions as I can. But first off, let's have a little bit of a Ben update. What is going on with me? Well, if you haven't already seen, the Herping the UK series of vlogs I'm doing is becoming a bit more successful. The first episode was a bit of a flop. I identified many frogs as toads or toads as frogs. I still can't remember off the top of my head, but it wasn't a great start. But since then, it's been going all right. The most recent episode, which was episode 3, has been really successful. It's only been it went live this time last week, so you guys have probably watched it. But it is the best performing vlog I've done so far, which is nice. I found great crested newts, great crested newt singular. I found loads and loads of common lizards, and I even caught a glimpse of the UK's rarest reptile, the smooth snake. It was probably the best day's herping I've ever had in my life, and it was definitely the best episode I've done so far. So I'll pop a link in the show notes below, so you guys can go and check it out after this episode. Don't go until the episode's finished. Let's check on the chat quickly as well, 'cause I can see comments coming through. Let's save the question. Riddler is saying, "Yo, champ, I'm at work, so I'll try and jump back on shortly." Everybody knows that Riddler's not actually working when he's at work anyway, so he's got no excuse not to be here, really. In fact, I'd be more disappointed if he's not here whilst he's at work than when he's at home, because at least at home he's got a newborn to look after. But yes, thank you for popping in, mate. Right, anyway, back to my updates. Next, I guess, is the vlogs. So the podcast is ticking over as it does. It's ticking over nicely, slowly gaining views, slowly gaining subscribers and listening and listeners and whatnot and followers and stuff. So yeah, it's doing really good. I'm really, really enjoying it. The vlogs seem to have really taken off recently. So I don't know if my vlogs are getting better or people are more brain dead or something, but the vlogs are doing really, really well in comparison to the podcast. The podcast will always be like first and foremost. ReptiChat will always be a podcast. The vlogs are just bonus content, but it is really good to see them doing so well. In regards to vlogs, I've got some good ones coming up. Patreon members will have already seen, but I headed to Crocodiles of the World recently. I vlogged the whole day, so you guys have got that to look forward to. And yesterday, I actually filmed a new build video for some James Bond type insects. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Patreon, you should have early access this week coming, providing I get it edited. But yeah, some cool stuff. But and the podcast is doing well. As a podcast, it's definitely quieting down a little bit with guests. But I do have a great one for you. The next podcast episode, I've managed to get James Cook, otherwise known as Wildlife with Cookie. You may have probably seen him. He's worked with BBC, as well as hosting his own YouTube channel and posting lots of content on Instagram as well. He has a video series where he's finding like UK non-natives. That's not what it's called. That's what I'm calling it. So he hunts down animals in the UK that are in the UK, but they shouldn't be here, and that's been a massive success. So you may have recently seen him on Instagram, probably. He did a video where he went to Scotland and found some kookaburras, and he also was searching for Asclepian snakes in London, alongside the Richmond Canal, I think it was. So yeah, that's next episode, episode 46. That should be a really good one, and that will be a live one as well. So plenty of opportunities for you guys to come and ask him lots and lots of questions. In terms of an episode that you haven't got to wait for, that I would highly recommend, was the last podcast episode, episode 44, with Zach Porritt, I believe that's called, from A Life Exotics on Instagram and YouTube. Honestly, this was probably my favourite episode I've recorded, bar the Christmas ones, but like my favourite proper episode. And for some reason, it's flopped a little bit. It's only had like 30 odd views. I don't know if YouTube's doing me dirty or whatnot, because Spotify's doing all right. But I would really recommend you go back and listen to that, because Zach has done what so many of us probably are dreaming of. I know I do. He has built this greenhouse in his garden, it's like a polytunnel greenhouse, 20 odd foot long, 16 foot wide. It might even be bigger than that. I think that's how big it is. And it's home to free roaming snakes and lizards and dart frogs and tree frogs. And there's all sorts of like fancy plants in there. And there's even a gigantic pond with some rays, arowana, and some other fish that I can't remember the names of off the top of my head. But yeah, there's so much in there. You guys need to go back and listen to it. Right, let's see what's going on in the chat before we carry on. Um, Matt says work, aka editing videos. Yeah, Riddler definitely doesn't actually do any proper work. He will be doing something YouTubey. Unfortunately, my senior tech has actually had me working today. How dare he? Scottish Kookaburra. Are you sure he didn't just bump into Michael? No, he definitely had real life kookaburras on camera. I was amazed. And my wife is in the comments as well saying, I have a question, but there's no question yet. Oh dear. Let's wait and see what she says. Da-da-da-da-da-da. We'll come back to that. Hopefully, I'm not in trouble. Right, moving on. What's going on with me and the mini zoo I call home? Lots and lots, but also nothing at all at the same time, really. Or what is she saying? Why can't I have the parrot for my 50th birthday? Right, for those that don't know, because most of you don't know, there was a parrot that was free on one of the WhatsApp groups earlier. And yeah, Vicky wants the parrot for her birthday, which is next weekend. But I have had to be a proper grown up and not get a parrot because I haven't got the space or the time for a parrot. And everybody says I should get the parrot, but I haven't got the parrot. Dan, I'm not getting the parrot. Yeah, I'd like the parrot. I love African greys as well, but I just haven't got the space and the time. And yeah, being a grown up is boring sometimes. I have to agree. Anyway, back to the me update. Right, first up, I guess, is the two horse-filled tortoises that we have, Chewy and Padme. Whilst nothing is happening at the moment with them, I am in the process of researching and cramming as much information as I can about hibernation. They both turn, I think, 6 this winter. It might be 5, it might be 6, I'm not sure. And the plan is to hibernate them both for the first time and then ideally breed them next spring. So there's lots and lots of research happening there. But quite frankly, the thought of putting them both in the fridge for however many months it takes is terrifying. And I'm not quite sure that I'm ready for it, but I've got to do it at some point. Yeah, Vicky, I am ignoring your comment. My friends don't need to bully me. I'm not getting a parrot. That and it's inside the congestion zone, and I'm not paying £22.50 or however much it is to drive into London for 4 minutes. So it's not happening. I'm not doing it. I'm putting my foot down. Anyway, talking of breeding, my lesbian gecko army, better known as morning geckos, have laid their first egg. Now, I'm not incubating it, rather, I'm just leaving it in the enclosure and letting nature take its course, but hopefully it will hatch. I don't see why it won't. It's looking good so far, and then I'll be inundated with tiny little geckos. So, yeah, that's really exciting. I've had the morning geckos since early November last year. I've been patiently waiting for eggs. I've got my first first egg that I can see, to be fair. The enclosure's pretty heavily planted, so there might be other eggs in there, but that's the first one that I've seen. So it's very exciting. From one tiny gecko to another, my group of 5 viper geckos seem to have settled in nicely, with 2 of the females looking extra chunky. Now, I'm not overfeeding them, I don't think. So either they're not sharing their food and they've had one too many crickets, or both of them are gravid. So here's hoping for the latter. So I could end up with lots of little tiny geckos everywhere, viper geckos and morning geckos. So that would be cool because I'm feeling got a bit of FOMO this year with the breeding. As normally this time of year there'd be royal eggs on the ground and probably baby royals by now as well. Obviously, there's no royal breeding going on at all, and all my friends are hatching stuff. Paul's hatched Aki's, the gill and I on their way, and obviously he's got the mangroves as well, which have hatched at the beginning of the year. My friend Bailey has hatched. What's he hatched? Scorpion geckos. Matt's hatching tree monitors everywhere. So yeah, me and Riddler as well. Apparently, both have baby reptile FOMO. So fingers crossed, there'll be some there'll be some babies on the ground soon enough. It's exciting. Ben's geckos. It doesn't sound have the same ring to it as Ben's balls, does it? But it'll be ReptiChat and his baby animals. Woo! And not a parrot. Oh. As for everything else, it's all doing pretty good. Squirtle Aki is believed to be a boy, which is cool. And not that it makes any difference, to be fair, but he's believed to be a boy, and he's slowly building his trust with me. I'm showing up every day and tongue feeding him and let him climb on my hand. And we're at the point now where he doesn't run away when I open the glass, which is nice, and he will come to the tongs for food. So yeah, we're slowly getting there. Gil and I, on the other hand, 2 of the 3 of them are tongue feeding every time I offer food by the tongs, which isn't all the time. They'll come out and sit on my hand and eat. They don't like being handled, but that's fine. I'm not that fussed about handling them. So that's 2 of the 3 of them. The other one has caused me many stresses, as it's dug a little hole in the background, which will foam, and I can't get it out, but it comes and goes as it wants to. But I have not seen it now for 13 days, which is great. I'm sure it's doing fine, but I am stressing a lot about it. Obviously, I'm not stood in front of the enclosure for 24 hours a day, every day, and I have been away for work for the last week, and then before that, I was away for 4 days doing a Tough Mudder. So, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. There's food in there. Hopefully, it'll be all right. I'm sure it will appear at some point soon, hopefully, because I'm quite stressed about it at the moment. But that doesn't matter. Leopard geckos and crested geckos are eating, pooping, and generally being derpy as always. And Grogu the chameleon is hanging about, always looking for food, and I swear he's always shedding as well. But yeah, he is doing good. So yeah, apart from the secret insects that I'm not revealing, I think that's all the cold-blooded things at home. I'm pretty sure. I don't think I've forgotten anything. So I guess it's time to get into the Q and A. So I've got a lot of questions saved on my phone. I will do my very best to read them off and keep up with the chat as well at the same time. I'm going to start with a question that's in the chat from Serenity Dragons, which says, how many licks does it take to get to the centre of a Tootsie Pop? I don't know what a Tootsie Pop is, because I am in England and we have just proper sweets and chocolate bars and stuff. And I know the American stuff is a bit questionable. So I don't know how many licks it takes to get to the centre of a Tootsie Pop. I'm going to guess 73. That is my guess. I don't know if it's correct or not. Right, what we're saying. When am I collecting the African grey parrot? Like I have said multiple times to my wife today, I'm not collecting an African grey parrot at all. Dan, stop encouraging her. It would be a great birthday present, but I've got a better birthday present lined up, and that is that. I'm not getting an African grey parrot. I'd love an African grey parrot, and if I could work from home all the time, I'd have an African grey parrot, but I have to be out 8 hours a day, and I can't rely on anybody else to look after it. I'm sure it would be fine. It's not worth the risk. I'm not doing it. 2 African grey parrots would probably be better because then they keep each other company, but no, I'm not doing it. Riddler, 82 wasn't far off my 73, so I don't know. We may never find out. Somebody needs to send me some Tootsie Pops and I'll find out. Right, first question. This one is from Instagram. And the question is, why is my friend's tortoise only producing slugs instead of babies? I don't know, to be honest. It can be a factor of many things. If it's housed on its own, then it's because it's a girl and they're dud eggs that haven't been fertilized. If it's with male, then maybe the male's a dud. Maybe he's shooting blanks. Maybe she's got something going on. Maybe they're not old enough. I don't know. There's so many varying factors into why animals produce slug eggs. I couldn't even give you a proper educated guess, unfortunately. But if anybody wants to know, oh yeah, so Riddler says the male is firing blanks. That could be the case. It could be too hot. It could be too cold. They might not be slugs. They might just be not incubated correctly. I guess there's many different things that could cause either infertile eggs or eggs not making it full term. I don't know, unfortunately. It's sad that it is happening though. So maybe chuck another mail in there, I guess, would be my first point of call. If you have another mail. Next question. What or which is the best reptile for a young child to start with? I don't know. It's going to be a common theme, I think. It's a difficult question. That it's one that I've spoken to Paul, I think, on the podcast before, if not just chatting. But not necessarily for a young child, but just your first ever reptile, I suppose, because there are, like we say, starter animals, which are like your leopard gecko, bearded dragon, corn snake. But quite often, people get those, as I say, a starter, and then they get bored of them. So I think my answer to that question would be, obviously, being sensible. I'm not suggesting you go and buy a venomous snake or a giant snake or a giant lizard, but for the most part, if as long as you do your research and you're 100% sure you've got the basic husbandry down, I don't see why there isn't any reason you can't have most reptiles as a starter animal. You wouldn't go and buy a dog that isn't the dog breed you want as a starter dog, so I don't see why you wouldn't go and get the animal that you actually want instead of one that will eventually not be, I guess, loved as much because it's not the animal you actually want. Like Matt says, green anaconda, and Riddler says a blue insularis. So yeah, I would ignore both of those suggestions and just go and get something that your local reptile shop has. Make sure you do your research first, get the husbandry correct, and go from there. Next one. What did you do with that massive branch yesterday? So if you don't know what the hell this question's about, yesterday on my Instagram story, I was walking down the road with a massive branch. I found it down the road. I needed a branch for my vivs, so that's what I did. I literally, it was, I don't know, 8 foot, a bit of apple tree that man had cut down, cut it up, and threw it in some vivs, and I used it for the James Bond insect that or insects that I did the video for yesterday. So when will that video be live? Not be like 3 weeks. So you got a little while to wait, but you could go on Patreon and it'll be on Patreon this week. Go check that out. Tell us about the lesbian gecko army's egg. There's not much to tell. It's a very small, very white egg. They laid it inside a bamboo tube. The egg is probably the size of a garden pea, I guess, and it's stuck upside down to the inside of a bamboo tube. It's been there for 3, maybe 4 weeks now. I don't actually know how long they take to incubate, so I might have a baby sooner rather than later. They're only little, so I can't imagine they take particularly long to incubate. But yeah, that's about as much as I can tell you about the lesbian gecko army egg at the moment. But hopefully, if there's one egg, there'll be more eggs to follow, and then I'm going to be inundated with little tiny baby morning geckos. I've got to get them a bigger enclosure. They're currently in a 30, 30, 45, and I want to put them in a 45, 45, 45, just to give them a bit more space. So hopefully I'll be able to get one of those before I end up with too many baby geckos. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. Next question, another one from Instagram. What is your biggest challenge with having a podcast? That is a very good question. I think there's two things that I struggle with the podcast. I didn't think I would when I started. So the first one is finding guests. Now, I didn't think that would be particularly difficult because obviously there's hundreds, if not thousands, of reptile keepers just in the UK alone, let alone worldwide. But finding people that either want to come and chat on a podcast, because obviously no, but not everyone wants to come on be on a podcast and be on camera and talk about whatever. That's quite difficult. And then finding people that not that I find interesting, because I find everyone interesting. I don't know. It's finding guests that I think other people will find interesting all the time is quite difficult. And then sometimes I get a guest on which I think is going to be a really good guest, and I find the episode is a struggle. The conversation doesn't flow particularly well. It just feels a bit wooden. And some people just aren't as chatty as other people. So obviously you gel with some guests, and unfortunately some you don't. So I think guests in general is the biggest challenge I have with the podcast. But apart from that, I don't think there are really any challenges. I'm enjoying it still. It's really good, and I've been consistent. I haven't missed an episode since I started it over a year ago, and we're on episode 45 today, so that's pretty good. Question in the chat from Riddler Reptiles: what are you going to do if they end up being too prolific? That is the lesbian geckos. If anyone doesn't know why I'm calling them lesbian geckos, it's because they are. So I've got morning geckos. Although you get males, it's very, very rare. 99% of them are female, and they reproduce through parthenogenesis, where they basically lay eggs, which are going to be little tiny clones of themselves. What am I going to do if they end up being too prolific? Well, I haven't really thought about it too much. Probably sell some babies. Like I bought. They're not expensive. I bought mine. I think I paid 15, 20 quid for a pair. So I can sell them. Got a local pet shop that quite often used to, when I had royals, would take a lot of my excess stock. So I'm sure they won't mind having a few geckos. And if it gets really, really bad, they might end up being feeder lizards. But who knows? We'll see. Hopefully it won't get to that, because I'm not sure I could deal with feeding them off. But if that happens, it happens. Yeah, that's a good question. I like that. Next question. What is the favourite UK herp I found so far? I'm gonna go so far this year, because I think I've seen nearly all of them now, like throughout my life. But this year I've obviously set out to find all of them in a year. My favourite ones I found so far. So smooth snake, obviously amazing. The smooth snake was incredible, but as you saw in the video, we flipped the tin, went, there's a smooth snake, that's amazing, and then put the tin back down, because they're so rare and so protected. We're not supposed to disturb them at all. I didn't know it was there. It was just fortunate that we did find it. So that was cool, but it was a very fleeting glimpse. As for one herps that we've interacted with, I suppose the common lizards are really cool. So we went to a relatively local, like, nature. It's not a nature reserve. It's just like a area of outstanding natural beauty with a really nice boardwalk. If you haven't watched the video, we found, I think, 23 common lizards in the space of about an hour and a half. And they varied in color, they varied in size. Handled a few of them, and yeah, it was really cool. I've never seen so many wild reptiles ever, and it was cool to be able to get hands on. So I think actually the smooth snake was obviously an incredible experience, but so far the common lizards, just because of the sheer quantity and variation in color, there's a lot of them. In chat, next question is from Matt. What is your next monitor going to be? So I have run out of space at home. I've got one Viv that is left to be filled, and I think I've decided finally what I'm going to fill it with. But I do have plans to add a tree monitor in the future. Now, because I've run out of space, I have to wait, unfortunately, for something to die. And I have a chameleon at home who is, I think he's 5 now. I'm not very good remembering ages, but I think he's 5. Generally, chameleons don't live past 7 or 8. So he's got a few years left. And he's in a big Viv. His Viv is 6 foot tall, 3 foot wide, 2 foot deep, which just happens to be a great size for a tree monitor. Now, I might be able to go a little bit bigger, but the plan is, once the chameleon, whose name is Grogu, eventually passes away, a tree monitor will be going in his place. I might upgrade the Viv. Well, I have to, actually, because his Viv or enclosure isn't suitable for a monitor, but that is my plan. As for color, I would really, really like a blue tree. Now, I don't know. Did I see if yeah. I'll come back to that. So yeah, ideally a blue tree. Now, they get a bit bigger than some of the others. I don't know if the space I have available will be big enough, but I've got a long way to go yet. And financially, they are not cheap animals. So, yeah, I'd like to get a tree monitor at some point. there's lots of questions going on in the chat, so we'll leave the Instagram ones for a minute and let's do some chat ones. Yeah, Riddler, a blue tree monitor is the tree monitor, and it's Dan's fault. Talking of tree monitors, Natalie, I'm going to come back to your question in a second. Serenity, did I see you feeding a tree monitor on Instagram the other day? Yes, you did. I was kindly invited over to Dan's, to Nardini Exotics, 2 weeks ago now, to have a look at his collection and feed some stuff. And yes, I fed his yellow tree monitor, his blue tree monitors, his Akis, his Pilbara. Was that it? I think that's it. But yeah, it was really, really cool. And it just cemented the love for blues. Like all of the tree monitors I've seen, like I've seen greens and I've fed them at pools. I've seen a black at pools and it's beautiful. And I fed it, which is cool. And Dan's got yellows and blues. But because I'm colorblind, I don't know if that's the reason. But I'm drawn to blues because I can see the blue really well. Like the yellows and greens are beautiful, but I really struggle with yellow and green colors because of the color blindness. So yeah, they look very similar. The blacks are incredible, but there's not as much pattern on the black. So I'm really drawn to the blues. So yeah, blues are the ones. Don't want to lose that question. Natalie says, is there a reptile/welfare related legislation coming down the pipe that you're particularly worried about or maybe happy to see come to fruition? That is a very, very good question. And to be honest, my answer is going to be a boring one, and my answer is no. Now, that's not to say there aren't any that I should be worried about, but I don't particularly keep up with the legislations, which I know is bad. And as a reptile keeper and a podcaster, I should be able to tell you what's going on and like share the stuff. But honestly, I don't really follow it, so I don't really know. The best people to, if you want to know what's going on, would be responsible reptile keeping. Those guys basically fight all those battles for us. So I don't need to know the ins and outs of everything that's going on because responsible reptile keeping do know the ins and outs of it. And being a member of responsible reptile keeping means that I can contribute and they can fight the battles for me. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have anything I can particularly talk about, Natalie, because I don't know. But responsible reptile keeping are doing their best to keep our animals safe, which is good. There's lots of chat going on in the chat. Let me try and keep up with what's going on. Riddler says, Gillenite and Aki. Yes, sorry, we did feed. I said Aki's, I think, but we did see Gillenite as well. Because Dan has got the brothers or sisters to my Gillenite, which is cool. It's nice to see how they're doing. Matt is talking about the colours. So he's saying blues, blacks, yellows, and greens. That's, yeah, I think I would agree with you in that order, Matt. I think definitely blues on top. Yeah, I don't know. Blacks are really cool, but I think blacks look better as babies, and then the adults not so much. Saying that, the only adults I've seen of blacks were at Crocodiles of the World, and they could vary quite a lot, so I don't know. Serenity Dragon says, I want a black tree, but Kayla likes blues better, so I have a bad feeling I'll end up with blues first. I don't think that's a bad thing, mate. The blues are incredible. Any more questions in chat? Are they just arguing about tree monitors? They are arguing about tree monitors. Right, so Instagram questions. I'll let them argue about tree monitors. Has the podcast lived up to your expectations? To be honest, the podcast has surpassed my expectations. When I started the podcast, I was still keeping reptiles. No, I was still keeping royals and royals only. And I thought, I'll start a podcast, maybe do a few episodes. We'll see how it goes. I didn't think I'd get past 5 episodes. And it's been over a year. I'm nearly at 50 episodes. And to be honest, I absolutely love it. I love sitting here every other Sunday evening, chatting away to the wonderful people on the internet that decide they want to support me, which is awesome. So yeah, the podcast has massively lived up to my expectations and smashed my expectations out of the water. I think that is down to the audience, you guys that are listening now and chatting away in the comments, and the guys that send me a message on Instagram afterwards and say I've been listening, on Patreon as well. All of your guys' support is just ridiculous. ridiculous. And I think if there wasn't the support I get from all you guys listening and watching and stuff, then I probably would have stopped at 5. But yeah, you guys are smashing it. So without you guys, it wouldn't. But thank you very much. Next question. What's the best thing you've noticed since swapping from racks? So if you haven't been listening for a while, I used to keep royals in racks, as I mentioned a few times today. I used to keep and breed royals. I kept and bred royals for about 15, 16 years, on and off. So I did a lot of that. Last year, I made the decision to sell all of the royals, get rid of the racks, and move into new stuff. Hence the Gillanai, Akis, Morning Geckos, Viper Geckos. Like they are in the place where the royals used to be. What have I know? What's the best thing I've noticed since swapping from racks? The best thing I've noticed in swapping from racks is I can see the animals without disturbing the animals. That is 100% my favorite thing about not having the racks anymore and having pretty large enclosures. So I used to stand in the kitchen staring at drawers of snakes, and occasionally I'd see the snakes rubbing their faces up and down the tubs, and that was as much as I see them unless I dragged it open, disturbed them, and saw a snake sat in a tub that was empty apart from a water bowl. Now I've got planted enclosures with lots of natural decor, and I can watch all the animals, especially the Gillanai, because they're probably the most active, running around, hunting, wagging their tails, and just doing natural stuff without me disturbing them. So that is my favourite thing about swapping since the racks. What's going on in the chat? Matt won't invite me to his house because he's got weird ideas that I'll leave for a baby green tree in my pocket. That's from Riddler. Serenity is saying that he doesn't think that's an unfounded fear. Riddler says, I offered to send him some of my Arcadia announcement photos, but ones are a bit more raw. And Serenity followed that up with that photo. It was amazing. So if you don't know, Riddler Reptiles is now the newest Arcadia partner. Unfortunately, I can't show the announcement photo on the podcast because YouTube will remove it because it goes against every single safety rule ever for public nudity and that sort of thing. So if you want to go and see it, go and check out Riddler's Instagram because that's an incredible achievement for him. So fair play to you, Mr. Riddler. You deserve it, mate. If nothing else, because you ate an entire spoonful of was it Repti Omni Gold? And I laughed a lot. And you're fantastic. Next question. Do you miss the snakes or breeding? If so, why? So this is one that I get asked quite a lot. Do I miss the snakes first? No, not really. Like I liked having the snakes and I really enjoyed having the snakes for a long time. But when I decided to sell them, that was it. I sort of parted ways. I've done my part of breeding the snakes and enjoying them as they were. But I got to the point where I didn't enjoy keeping them anymore because of the way I was keeping them. I think maybe if I kept one in a Viv, I'd quite like that. But no, I don't miss them. And I'm glad that I have parted ways with them. But I do miss breeding the snakes. And I suppose that's a whole different thing to keeping the snakes. The reason I miss breeding the snakes, I miss the excitement of having the eggs. I miss the excitement of seeing the snake's pip. I miss the excitement of seeing what colour morphs I have produced. But if I sit tight, obviously I'm going to have baby geckos. I'm going to have baby geckos of different species. Hopefully next year we'll have baby tortoises. And I'm not fussed about the morphs anymore. I've gone I don't know if I've gone, well, not full circle, but like 180. So I used to love all the royal morphs. And I don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against anybody that's breeding royals. You guys crack on. And if it's your passion, then it's your passion. It's not for anyone else to judge. But for me, I am actively, it's funny actually, I'm now actively put off by morphs or animals that have morphs that are bred. So does that make sense? I know what I'm trying to say. Like I've been looking for animals to fill this enclosure that I've got at home, and I can't. I think I've now found what I wanted. Well, what fits my criteria and one that I like. But I was looking at so many animals, and there were so many cool things that I looked at. Lots of snakes, lots of lizards, and then I'd see that the wild type ones and then there's morphs. And as soon as I see the morphs, it puts me off the whole animal because I'm not 100% sure why, but I feel like people won't be caring, well, not caring for. People won't be choosing to look at to have those animals in their collection because of the animal itself, but more because of the color mutation. I think that makes sense. So I'm trying to find. I have found animals now. Um, that are they're just wild types, and they look cool. I like them for the fact that they are what they are. I don't have to worry about breeding them and going, oh, this color's that or this color's that. Like I've got 3 cresties, and I stopped breeding those because people were asking what the morphs were, and I don't know what the morphs were. There were just 3 cresties to me. There were 3 pet cresties, and I was quite happy just selling them as pet cresties. But yeah, I stopped breeding them because I just didn't want to have to deal with it. Um, but yeah, so I miss the snakes. No, I don't miss the snakes. I do miss breeding the snakes. Matt says one thing I do like the idea of is live birth rather than eggs. Matt, it's funny. I was talking to my wife about that yesterday. I think, or might have been a couple of days ago. I've never had the opportunity to do breed anything that has live birth. I think it would be really, really interesting. Like Samboas, possibly. They're quite small. It'd be quite cool to do, or skinks or something like that. I really like the idea of doing a live birth breeding project just for the experience. I think it'd be quite cool to one day come down, look in the viv, and there's just babies everywhere. So that's quite exciting. What we got? Let's talk about football. Let's ignore that. Imagine breeding tree monitors and not knowing which color you'd hatch. I think that'd be quite exciting, though. Like that's something I do miss. Do I miss? I don't know. But one of the main things that I loved about breeding royals was when you either see the eggs hatch like Pip, or you cut the eggs and you see what's inside. It was always very, very exciting. Yeah, that's mad. Any more questions going on in the chat? If not, we'll go back to an Instagram one. Riddler, what would I have to do to get you to send me an autographed copy of that Arcadia photo so I can hang it on the wall? Riddler, if you offered the Arcadia photo signed as a limited edition print for Patreons, I would also want one just because it is hilarious. I'd hang it up where are we? I'd hang it up here and people could see it every single time they watch the episode. Talking of live birth is hard to plan for. It's just a surprise. I suppose, yes. Can you? I don't know how it works. I don't really know anything about it. Can you see, like, obviously, when royals and most snakes, like, they ovulate, you see that clear ovulation, and then you can get a rough idea of how long it's going to be. Is it same with live births? Do you catch the ovulation and then you can roughly guess it? Ridley, you have my address already. I expect to see a copy of that on my doorstep soon. Fiona says, no, I forgot this was on. Fake fan. Doesn't matter. Fiona, you're here now. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you and Paul are all right. What we're saying, no one's just saying that. I'll hold you. Riddler, I'll tell you now, if you send me a picture, I'll hang it up there. It might not be for every episode, but it will definitely be up for at least an episode. Right, let's move on to another question from Instagram. What's your biggest keeping goal this year and in 5 years? That is a good question. So let's say not for 2024, but for a year from today. My keeping goals for up to a year from today, I'd like to have eggs or baby tortoises. So that's exciting. Like, baby tortoises are ridiculously cute. And if I've got eggs and babies, that means that they're successfully hibernated, nobody died over the winter, and I've successfully bred, incubated, and hatched baby tortoises, which would be incredible because I've never done that before. For those that don't know, what have I hatched myself in the past? I've done corn snakes, royals, leopard geckos, bearded dragons, couple of spiders or tarantulas. I think that's it. Oh, and roaches, but they don't count. So yeah, I think hatching baby tortoises is my main keeping goal for the next 365 days. that, as well as the viper geckos, like hatching babies from the viper geckos, would be another incredible thing. And the morning geckos, I don't think I can count myself as breeding those because they just make babies. But hopefully I'll have too many to know what to do with, and I can start giving them away to people or whatever. Riddler, if I have baby tortoises, you can have a baby tortoise. Because if I don't give them away or sell them, my wife will want to keep all of them. And then my goal in the next 5 years, I don't have any real goals in the next 5 years apart from keeping happy, healthy animals. I maybe a tree monitor, but like I said, it depends when the chameleon passes away. I don't want the chameleon to die, so I'm not in a rush. Like if he lasts another 5 years, I'm happy with that. I'm not wishing him dead so I can have space for other stuff. So yeah, maybe a tree monitor. And I suppose in 5 years I could potentially have baby and depending on how they go, but I'm not that fussed. Happy, healthy animals, maybe some baby tortoises because baby tortoises are really cute. Another question from the chat: what's your biggest regret regarding reptile keeping? That is a very good question. My biggest regret regarding reptile keeping. So when I was, I don't know, 18, 19, I think. I was living in a house that I'd rented with a friend of mine and his girlfriend, and we were breeding and keeping. We kept lots of reptiles, but we were breeding and keeping royals predominantly, as well as a few other bits and bobs. And we basically decided that it wasn't for us living together, and I moved out. And in doing so, I moved into a room instead of a house or a flat, and I sold all of my reptiles. And I then didn't keep anything for a good 6, 7 years. And I feel like I missed out a big chunk of what could have been because I had to sell them. In hindsight, I could have kept them, and it would just been a really tight squeeze in the room that I was renting, and it would have probably been all right. But yeah, I needed cash quick, and one thing led to another, and I had to sell them all. So I think that was my biggest regret, was just selling things when I probably could have kept them. But for the most part, I don't regret much. Unfortunately, like, things die, and you get that odd mistake that are made. But I think they're more learning curves than things to regret. So yeah, I think selling up when I probably didn't need to is my biggest regret. Oh, good question. I like that. Next Instagram question: what are 3 things that made you pick monitors after selling the royals? Can I name 3? Probably. So, my first thing that made me pick monitors was the sheer intelligence in in their eyes, in the way they move. They're just ridiculous. Like, I remember growing up, Steve Irwin, as everybody does, chasing komodos and catching lace monitors and all sorts of stuff. And lizards, especially monitors, have always been something that I wanted but could never provide the room for, and or have the money to buy them at the time. So I remember when I was probably 16, 17, there was a trio of Akis for sale with a setup in my local reptile shop. It was like £1,700, and I could not afford it. Like, I was brassic at the best of times. So I think, but I've always wanted one. So when the opportunity came round to get some, then I jumped at it this time. So yeah, I suppose first, number 1, intelligence. Number 2, they're quite personable animals. Like, they can be quite tame. I quite like the idea of being able to handle it if I want to and tongue feeding it, but at the same time, I'm not force handling it. But yeah, I like the bond you can build with them. And the third thing that made me pick monitors is, I don't think I have a third thing. What would be the third thing? They're just cool, aren't they? Like, there's no fancy terminology. They're just cool. So yeah, that is my 3 things that made me pick monitors. What is going on? There's a question here. Not directed at me, but Fiona, do you think Paul would appreciate a signed copy of my Arcadia photo? I can tell you now, Riddler, he definitely wouldn't, but you should still send it to him. You never know, he might keep it. Uh, get Arcadia to send him a care package, which is just 100 posters. I would love that. Oh, I definitely think there needs to be some signed Arcadia pictures from Riddler Reptiles. We want that. Oh, Bailey is there as well. Hello, Bailey. Thanks for tuning in. Nice to see you, mate. Next Instagram question. Do you regret anything in your keeping journey? No, I've just answered that. But yeah, if you want, yeah, Matt's doesn't ask me the same thing. So yeah. Next question then. Are you still loving social media? Elaborate on the answer. I don't know if I've ever loved social media. So in my brain, social media is Instagram and Facebook. YouTube does not count to me as social media. I see that as like a entertainment platform instead. So am I loving Instagram and Facebook? Facebook is Facebook. It's there. It's a tool. I don't really do anything with it. It's just linked to my Instagram. So everything I post on Instagram automatically gets thrown over to Facebook, and occasionally it tells me that I have a comment that I need to go and reply to, which I do. Instagram, am I loving it? Yes and no. I like the social side of Instagram. It's very good for finding guests. It's nice to keep up to date with people and chatting, but I find the algorithm messes me about quite often, and I don't see what I want to see. I see what Instagram wants me to see. So I quite often lose touch with people through Instagram that I have been chatting to because Instagram was like, you've seen enough of their content. Let's go and see some other stuff. So yeah, that's quite irritating. But for the most part, I like it. I'd probably say I'm quite indifferent. I think it's definitely a tool that is needed, especially for the podcast, because, like I said, it's the best place for me to find guests and chat with people and stuff like that. Do I love it? No. It's a bit of a chore sometimes, especially if I want to keep up to date with numbers and stuff, because you have to post so often. And sometimes I just don't have stuff to post for a few days. So, yeah. What is going on? Bailey says, "Hey, how is everybody? Big day tomorrow." I don't want to say. If you're reading the chat, you can, but I'm not going to say that because I don't know if that's been announced or not for anyone. So that is not for me to say. So yeah. Next question: when are we finding sand lizards? I know a spot and I saw a tail. Mr. Person that left the comment, basically just tell me when. Tell me when, and I'm there. We've also got some Italian sand lizard hunting trip at some point soon, which I'm also very excited about. So yeah, just say when and I'm there for the sand lizards. Next question: how is Pallet? So if you don't know, Pallet is the great crested newt that I found in the last Herp in the UK video, where I actually had to relocate them, and they got relocated to my pond at home because I found them in a pile of pallets, hence the name Pallet. What's saying there? Have you been? Oh, I'll come back to that in a minute, Matt. So yeah, Pallet. I don't know how they're doing, to be honest. They're in the pond. I haven't seen them, so I don't know. I have like the dogs are in the garden, and I think if Pallet was out and about, the dogs would have probably found Pallet. And I haven't found Pallet with the dogs, so that's good. I guess they're either in the pond under the decking, or they have made their way to wherever else. Because I have like a copse type woodland behind my house as well, so there's plenty of options. Doesn't mean they're necessarily still in the pond. Right, next question. Where did that question go? Have you been to the invasive scorpions? No, I haven't, but I have a friend that has been to them. He went, I can't remember where it is. It's an island off Kent, isn't it? Or something like that. It's definitely in Kent. And he went with a black light and he found some scorpions. I think they're called yellow-tailed scorpions. And he brought them home and he kept them at home for a while because they're invasive, so you're allowed to keep them. He fed them wood lice and stuff out of the garden, and they were cool species of scorpion. So that is on the cards this year, as well as going for Italian sand lizards. is go and find some invasive scorpions. That, as well as the Asclepian snakes, and obviously finishing off herping in the UK and finding the last few UK herps that I'm yet to find. So yeah, Bailey, what's he saying? I'm driving down to pick them up tomorrow, getting 7. I thought you were getting 5. Riddler also says he thought there was 5. Going to co-hab with a few others. See, I want to get some as well because after talking to, I'm not mentioning what they actually are because I don't know if Riddler's announced it. I don't want to say it if he hasn't. But I also was looking at some because after talking to you and Paul Bailey about the Tachydromus, and the things that you're collecting, I would like to do a bit of a cohab with those. But I'm not sure if I've got the space. I want to get a trio of Tackies. I don't know if a trio of those and 2 of the things that you're collecting will be all right in a 45, 60. It might be too cramped, and I don't want them to be too cramped. I don't want any tomorrow, mate, but thank you very much. I haven't got the money, and I want to get Tackies before I get the things that you're picking up. Next Instagram question. If someone wants to breed royals, what advice would you give unbiased, both sides? What advice would I give to someone that wants to breed royals? Right. Here's my hot take on breeding royals. If you want to breed royals for the experience of breeding royals, or you've got a pair and you want to do it. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Crack on. It's a cool experience. They're relatively easy to breed. But I would advise probably only doing it once because there's literally 50,000 of them on Morph Market. You'll struggle to get rid of them, to be honest. And nobody needs 50,000 royals. If you're trying to breed royals because you want to make a royal breeding business, because you see other people doing it, don't do it. Unless you're investing hundreds of thousands of pounds and you're buying top-end animals and you're constantly chasing the top-end animals, you're never going to catch up. You're never going to make any money. And then you end up with loads and loads of surplus animals that unfortunately end up in the freezer or dumped somewhere or in rescues. And it's just not worth doing it, to be honest. That's my opinion. It is slightly biased, I guess, but it's my experience as well. Like the last clutches of Royals I bred, I had 4 clutches, and I end up basically giving the babies away because nobody wanted to buy them because there's 50,000 snakes available and they're all the same. And unfortunately, I think Royals have had their day. Saying that, Riddler says, does anyone in the chat want to buy a Royal from me? He's got 2 Royals for sale. I think one of them's a pied. Riddler, pop the morphs up, and I'll pop them up on here just in case anybody is listening and they do want a Royal. Even if it's just a pets, I think they're great. I wouldn't breed them anymore. And I think there needs to be a bit of a lapse in people breeding them just to let the numbers, especially the numbers that are for sale, disappear because there's 50,000 and they live for 20, 30 years. It's a lot of snakes and there's not that many keepers. So people need to just slow down. Anyone that is interested, though, he's got a pinstripe pied and a pastel 100% het clown. So go and DM Riddler Reptiles. Next question on Instagram. Don't forget, guys, if you're in the live chat, get your questions in. We are getting to the end of the questions. Actually, this is the last question I have. So if you've got any questions, now's your time to get your questions in. Last question from Instagram. What is weekly maintenance like for you in your room? So it varies quite a lot, but I will talk you through a day or a couple of days in the life of Ben in the reptile house because I don't have a reptile room. There's reptiles in every room of the house apart from the toilet, bathroom area. So get up in the morning, check all the lights have come on, check the waters. If there's any soiled waters, I'll change them before work. Feed the tortoises. The Cresties have got an automatic mister, so I don't spray the Cresties. Grogu the chameleon gets sprayed. I think is that all I do in the mornings? Yeah, feed tortoises, spray the chameleon, make sure everything's on. Change any waters that need changing. Come home from work. If the Aki is out, I will tongue feed the Aki a couple of times and then throw a few crickets in there for the Aki to So in chase, Gil and I generally, I will just throw some bugs in probably once every 3 to 4 days. And the same with the Aki, like she doesn't get tongue fed every day. She's out. If she's out and about actively hunting, then I'll tongue feed her. So that's like same as Gil and I say her, he. So every 3 or 4 days, and he gets some crickets. Then in the evenings, the viper geckos get a light misting. The morning geckos get a heavy misting. Groger gets sprayed again, the chameleon, and he gets fed. The morning geckos and the crested geckos get Rapashi or Pangea or whatever I've got at the time, which then gets taken out again in the morning. And then I deal with the feeders. So crickets get fresh food, fresh water. Mealworms get fresh food, and any of the, I don't know what they're called, there's like cocoon things, get moved from one tray in the bug factory mealworm breeding thing to the other tray. Isopods get fed and sprayed every other day or so as well. And yeah, and then freshwaters as probably every other day. If it's really hot, every day, and if they're like dirty, then every day. But yeah, there's not really a lot of maintenance to it. Change bulbs when they blow. UVBs get moved around every 6 months. Really, I need to invest in a solar meter because I'm probably wasting loads of money by changing them early. Because sometimes I get they're like done by 6 months, and other times you get 18 months out of them. But without a solar meter, who knows? So I need to invest in one of those. But yeah, I think that's about it really for the maintenance. I like to change the vivs up as well, so they'll get plants added or plants taken out or branches added, branches taken out, rocks and all that sort of stuff. I recently chucked some cress seeds in with a couple of the enclosures as well because I want to try and grow some cress in there just to add like another level to it. So yeah, that is it. Let me just check on Instagram to make sure I haven't missed any recent questions since the podcast went live. No, nothing on there. So I think, let me just double check everywhere else. I think that is us at the end of the podcast. So I will give you guys a couple of minutes to get any last questions in. If you want to get any questions in, Riddler Reptiles, I really would like a signed Arcadia photo. Get that sorted out, please. So yeah, let me finish off the podcast and I will just add any extra questions that you guys want to leave in the chat for the end. So there we have it. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Bear with, there's a question. Bailey says, what can you see yourself keeping in 3 to 5 years? I don't know where I got 5 from. It says, where can you see yourself? What? Oh my God, I can't even read. What can you see yourself keeping in 3 years? Honestly, I can't see much changing. I don't plan on getting rid of anything. So it will just be adding some tachydromus, hopefully, and possibly some little dwarf geckos to cohab with them. And depending on the lifespan of the chameleon, there may be a tree monitor in the future. But like I said earlier, I'm not wishing the chameleon dead. So if he lasts 5 years, he lasts another 5 years. If he lasts another 10 years, then I might get a Guinness World Record certificate. But yeah, apart from that, nothing in particular. I'd quite like a massive tortoise, like a sulcata or an aldabra or Bernese mountain tortoise. But realistically, I haven't got the money to do that, so that's not going to happen. So yeah, I hope that answers that one. Riddler has just printed pictures off at work. People are going to get some explicit pictures, unfortunately. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like I said, go and check out Riddler Reptiles on Instagram. Anyway, that's that. Hopefully you all enjoyed the episode. As I said at the top of the show, there is a Patreon available. It starts at only £1 a month, and there's even a 7-day free trial. Link is in the show notes below. If you want to help the pod, but Patreon isn't quite your thing, then please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as giving the video a thumbs up and leaving a comment, a normal comment, not a live chat comment. Go and click on the other comments, then leave a comment. It all massively helps. It helps YouTube realize that the podcast is good and it pushes it. So, yeah. That's really good. If you could do that, I would be eternally grateful. If you want to keep up to date with me and the podcast, go and search ReptiChat on all the socials. You'll find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's it. The only thing I'm not on is Twitter or X, whatever it's called, and Threads. I'm on Threads, but I've never used it. I signed up to Instagram and stopped pestering me. Yeah, that's it. That is me for today. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Live chat. Thank you very much for being there as well. I massively appreciate it. So I have been Ben McIntyre. This has been a ReptiChat podcast, and I will see you in a week. Until then, bye bye.